Hey Lions, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Lexi The Leo, and on this channel we do pick a cards, we talk about astrology and all things spirituality. So if you are interested in that, hit that subscribe button. Now in today's video we are following on with the planets in astrology, and we have now moved on to Neptune. So I'm going to be talking about what Neptune means in the natal chart, and then I'm going to go through Neptune in all the houses for you guys to have a better understanding of this placement in your natal chart. Now if you guys already know what house that your Neptune is in, then the timestamps are going to be in the description box below in the comment section. But if you do not, I will have a link in the description box for you guys to follow so you can find out where Neptune sits in your natal chart. But before we go into what it means in the houses, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Neptune means as a planet and what we're going to be looking into in this video today. So guys, Neptune in astrology is ruled by Pisces, and Neptune is known as the god of the sea. So this planet is a very sensitive planet. This is a very psychic planet, a very spiritual planet. It rules the spiritual realms. There's nothing concrete about this planet at all. This planet is all about fantasy, imagination, psychic abilities, the metaphysical, but it's also about illusions. It's about addiction, it's about self-sacrifice. The planet shows where we tend to not see things very concrete and have our rose-tinted glasses on in our life. So with this placement, I do feel like this is a really important placement to see where it is that you don't necessarily see things through a true lens, because Neptune comes and puts this kind of mist over your eyes where you don't see things in concrete, you know. And while Neptune is all about, you know, dreams, manifestation, intuition, like where you dream big, it's also very detrimental to knowing the key to your inner self, you know what I mean, in the higher realms. So this is a really important planet to know which house it's in so you can find that balance and use it to your advantage. That's kind of why I do all of these videos, to be honest with you. So Neptune, it stays in a sign for about 14 years. It stays in one sign for about 14 years. So you want to look at what house it's in to have a more personalized representation of what this means in your natal chart, to be honest with you. And for me personally, like identifying where Neptune is, which house Neptune is in the chart, really identifies where you tend to self-sacrifice and look over and not see things clearly. So finding out that and using it to your advantage so you can balance yourself in that area can really help you on your soul's journey. And obviously, like all of the videos, guys, we're just looking at Neptune in the houses. I would obviously need to have your like natal chart in front of me to see like the good aspects and the bad aspects, because obviously it can manifest in multiple different ways in the natal chart. For example, having good aspects with Neptune, that can bring about a lot of artistry, a lot of psychic abilities, and just some beautiful creativity, you know what I mean? It can manifest that way. Whereas if you have more negative aspects, it can bring about more like illusioned, delusioned parts of yourself when it comes to the area of the house that it's in. So it's definitely worth looking at your natal chart for that, but I'm going to be going through as much as I can with Neptune being in the houses and how it can manifest. So like I said, Neptune really shows us where we place illusions in our life and where we just live in a higher vibrational kind of realm in this life and don't see it the way that it could concretely be, you know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. I think I just spoke really weirdly then, but I hope that makes sense. So without further ado, guys, I'm gonna go into Neptune in all of the houses for you. So the timestamps are gonna be in the comment section and in the description box below, and I will see you guys at your timestamp. Okay, so Neptune in the first house. Now, the first house is the house of self. This is how we come across to other people. So with Neptune being here, this gives us a kind of distorted view of who we are as people and who we are projecting ourselves to be. And a lot of people with Neptune in the first house may look to their peers or the people around them to kind of define who they are. And the thing is, you probably walk through life with really good intention, but you'll have like your head in the clouds, you know what I mean? You'll come across very dreamlike, very you're just living somewhere else, you know what I mean? And that will come across to other people. People may not be able to define you very well. You're always living in another realm almost. And I find the closer that Neptune is to the ascendant, the more dreamy you're going to come across. You know what I mean? You're going to come across more mystical, and it's kind of alluring, because when we think of people that are quite mystical, we can't really quite put a finger on them. That in itself, that's mysterious, so it kind of oozes this kind of alluring energy. So you'll probably find that you're quite alluring to other people because they can't quite put a finger on you, because you were just kind of like always somewhere else, you know what I mean? So you'll find a lot of people will be probably quite interested in you and trying to like work you out, because you kind of have this energy like you may say stuff, but there's always something else hidden. There's always something else about you that they can't quite understand. It's like, it's almost like you're living a double life. Like people just feel like there's always something more to be reached with you. Like you don't give off a lot. You know, like celebrities, when they don't really say a lot about themselves, it's kind of like alluring. You know, like The Weeknd, he never really does interviews, or Beyonce never does interviews, and he kind of like leaves people wanting more. You'll kind of have that energy. Like people will want to know more about you because you don't really give off much. And it could be that you literally tell everybody everything about you, but because your mind's always in a higher realm and you always give off this very Neptunian kind of like energy, people are always going to feel like there's something more, like something that they want to know but they can't really put their finger on. And obviously, because Neptune is like a watery planet, I mean Neptune's like the god of the sea, so with that being said, you guys are going to be extremely empathic, very empathic, and be able to pick up on the emotions and feelings of other people very, very easily. You'll probably need a lot of alone time to kind of isolate and kind of like withdraw your energy and kind of fill your cup again, because you're going to be a very very sensitive to other people's energies. And I usually do find with Neptune in the first house, you may pick up on other people's accents and mannerisms. So say now you're around somebody who like talks with their hands, you'll naturally just start talking with your hands, you don't even realize it, or you'll just be mirroring other people. Maybe you'll be around somebody who has like a different accent to you, and you'll start picking up on it very easily. Like you naturally just become influenced by other people and start acting like them because you just pick up on it, and then the minute you're not around them so much anymore, it kind of like fades away. Like you just naturally have that beautiful empathic aura about you. And what you're really learning with Neptune in the first house is to have a more grounded sense of self. With Neptune in the first house, you don't really have that. You can't even put a finger on who you are really. Like you're always kind of like ever changing. You don't really know how to define yourself, and you're working on having a stronger sense of self, being able to stick up for yourself, being able to have boundaries. Usually in the earlier life you may lack boundaries and things like that, and you may find with other people will project what they want of you onto you. I find this a lot with a lot of celebrities with Neptune in the first house. Like you can be somebody that is very introverted and more into like books or something like that, but you may have such an alluring presence that a lot of people will project a very like sexual kind of like energy onto you, or they'll view you in their mind as something when you're actually something else. They project what they want you to be onto you, so people won't really understand who you are. Sometimes they'll just project a completely different construct that they've made up in their mind on you, because there's that illusion, you know what I mean? Because the first house is, you know, it's the rising sign, you know what I mean? It's how people perceive us, so people can project their own ideals really onto you sometimes with this placement. But yeah, you guys are really learning to set boundaries in this life and really like become more grounded and put your foot down and assert yourself a little bit more. You sometimes may kind of get lost with the tides, get lost in the crowd, and you're learning to, you know, take those rose tinted glasses off with other people and really set boundaries, say no, refine yourself a little bit more and find that sense of self. You're learning to have that balance in this lifetime, because you kind of be fighting to kind of like work through what other people have projected on you. You know what I mean? Like I said, people will project what they want you to be on them, but you're going to be fighting through that and finding your own sense of self through that and becoming more grounded in who you are, knowing who you are and owning it and putting it out there unapologetically. Because with this placement, this can, you know, you can fall into anxiety and things like that. So it's learning to be very comfortable in your own skin and refining what it is that you love, who you you are, what your personality is like. Because you may find like in earlier childhood, like yeah, you had rose tinted glasses and people may have like taken advantage of you, or you just kind of been swept away with them and not even realized it, because there's kind of a blurred line when it comes to you and other people. Like I said, you're very empathic too, so somebody might want to do something and you don't, but you're picking up on their energy, so you might end up doing it anyway. You know what I mean? You can fall into that with this placement. Like you may as well have like alter egos of what people may want you to be. So somebody may project that they want you to be somebody that's like quite funny, like a class clown. All of a sudden you start acting like a class clown. There we go, a class clown, but that's not really you, but you project that outwards because you know that's what people would want you to see. You could be around somebody that deems you quite sexy or something like that, and you could maybe have an alter ego that is a little bit more like sexy and like domineering or something like that, and then you know that's not really you either. Like you may find that you have a lot of alter egos when dealing with different people, you know, because with this energy that can sometimes allude to being a little bit people pleasy, but as time goes on, as you learn to grow out of that and find who you are as a person and refine it. One thing that I will say as well, like I said, you may come across like you have your head in the clouds, and you may very well have your head in the clouds and always be living in the kind of higher realms in a way, but you want to make sure that you're grounding yourself, because sometimes, especially with this Neptune energy, this can sometimes fall into like addictions or just, you know, having vices to kind of like hone that sensitivity, and you want to make sure that you're doing more, you know, healing remedies or grounding and really looking after yourself, rather than falling into vices like supplements and things like that that can, you know, sometimes fall into a bit of an addiction. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're nipping that in the bud, because you can sometimes get swept away with anxiety with this placement. But all in all, you're learning to really refine who you are and kind of like expand past people's projections of you. So that's all I have for Neptune in the first house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the second house. Okay, so with Neptune in the second house is all about finances and security, and to be honest with you, it's the most fixed concrete kind of house out of all of them. And then Neptune comes in, which is the most otherworldly, like spiritual, ungrounded planet. So it's a funny placement to be in, to be honest with you. And you know, when we think of money, money is a very 3D construct. It's a very 3D construct. It's a very physical construct. And it's just like, with that being said, with Neptune being here, there's a lot of illusions when it comes to money and finances and security, because, you know, this can manifest in different ways depending on how good, you know, how the aspects are, if they're good aspects or negative aspects. Some ways it can manifest as somebody who just doesn't have very good control over their money, likes to spend their money a lot, doesn't really think of the consequences, and just will kind of spend and give to other people, or just give to themselves and not really think about what could happen afterwards, because there's kind of like this illusion here of like, oh well, you know, it'll come back to me at one point, which I guess is quite optimistic, but like I said, depending on how it's aspecting in your chart, you don't know how that's gonna go. So as well as that, it can manifest as somebody who doesn't really attach themselves to money very well, because like I said, Neptune is a very spiritual, ungrounded planet, and yeah, they don't like to attach, whereas like, you know, the finances and the security side of the second house, that's a very fixed energy. So you may find with this placement, like, you don't really attach yourselves to money, you don't really put a lot of energy towards money and finances in your life. Like, you may just feel like money isn't something that you really require in your life, and obviously that can work in a positive way or a negative way, because sometimes being unattached kind of attaches, like, sometimes being unattached can attract like everything, you know what I mean? But then sometimes there's like this carelessness energy. It can manifest in a way where you're completely careless about it and you just end up kind of going without. So you want to make sure that you're balancing yourself when it comes to your security and your finances and money and that side of your life with this placement, because there's almost like a fog over it. This can also manifest as somebody that, like, say now they're working on like a business project or something like that, and they could be like overly optimistic about how it's gonna go, like thinking it's gonna bring all this money in, and then it ends up not, because they weren't really looking at the concrete facts. They were looking at it from a more higher view. Or it could go the other way, where they might not have thought about it too much because they didn't really care for the money, and then it ends up coming back tenfold. Like I said, it can manifest in either way. But mostly with this planet, like, like Neptune usually shows us where we will sacrifice. So with that being said, you may fall into jobs where you give a lot of yourself. You may fall into like humanitarian jobs, or jobs where you're really helping and giving to other people, helping people spiritually. You're just kind of giving for the kindness of your heart, because that is self-sacrifice at the end of the day. So you may find that you do jobs like that for money, you know what I mean? Like jobs where you just really help people and kind of like bend over backwards for them, and that's kind of like the career path, and that's what brings you financial stability in your life, because this really does indicate like giving and not really caring too much to receive. So with that being said, you could also gain money through like some sort of artistry, like singing or art or acting or poetry and writing, and then again, you know, the spiritual side of it, you could be psychics, you could be astrologers, things like that. You know, you may find that you make your money and your security in that kind of way. That usually does happen with this placement. A lot of psychics would have a placement like that, where that's where they get their security from, helping other people in like otherworldly ways, or, you know, artsy kind of ways. Because, you know, Neptune is just not a grounded planet. It's a very ungrounded planet. It's very for the higher realms. So if it's going to have any sort of influence over the second house and finances and security, it's going to be a spiritual one, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like the second house is compromising, and like, yeah, okay, we'll make some money in the 3D, we'll make some security, but it's got to be done in an unconventional way, you know what I mean? A more higher vibrational way. But you always want to be careful with this placement, because this placement can usually have people tend to kind of like overlook their finances and where their money is going, and where, who, when, where, why, you know what I mean? They'll tend to like not really look at it and kind of skirt over it, and obviously that can be dangerous if you're not becoming, you know, if you're not that grounded to your money and your security. So you want to make sure that you're having that balance with this placement and knowing where your assets and your finances are going, to make sure you're looking at it from a very balanced approach. So that is all I have for Neptune in the second house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the third. So Neptune in the third house. So obviously the third house, it rules communication, information, learning and things like that. So with Neptune being here, this is somebody that's going to have a very active imagination, and somebody that is going to daydream quite a bit. Their mind's always going to be in the higher realms, living, you know, an alternative life. Their mind's always going to be thinking and moving on to the next, and they're going to have these really big imaginations and big dreams. But even though that sounds blissful, that can usually fall into having a lack of concentration and not really being very grounded in the physical reality, and their head's very much going to be in the clouds. They're not going to be able to have that discipline as strongly to be able to apply themselves to the area that is the third house, you know, learning and communication and information. It's like there's a blurred sense here. They can't quite ground themselves in that reality, and that's not going to say that that takes any of the factors away from the third house, because usually with Neptune in the third house, you are going to be someone that probably learns a lot and is quite intelligent, but you may find that you learn about things with a Neptune kind of influence. You know, you'll learn about tarot and spirituality and the metaphysical and astrology and things like that. You'll probably be very interested in the occult and learning about that and finding more information about that for your mind to tick. And you'll really probably find that in this lifetime you're seeking a lot of spiritual wisdom to find answers to things, rather than a more concrete in book type of like way of learning. You're looking for more spiritual wisdom and spiritual insight. What I do find with this placement is you might even have clairsentient abilities, where you may actually receive information or feel information from others in the higher realms, like clairsentiently, like you'll feel it, or it'll just pop into your brain clairvoyantly. So you may get information from higher realms, or you may just pick up on feelings and energies of other people. But the thing is that you'll feel all of this energy. But with the third house, which is how we communicate with other people, there's that blue Neptunian kind of like influence here. So it's like you'll feel these feelings, you'll have these things to say, you'll have these great, artistic visions to kind of like share, or words to share, but it's like you'll have a hard time putting it into the physical. You'll have a hard time actually explaining what you're feeling and what you're being shown spiritually to other people, what you're clairsentiently picking up on, feelings that you're feeling. You'll have a hard time saying it with words, because Neptune kind of puts that bit of fog over it. It's kind of hard for you to get these things out there. And the thing is, like I said, like, you guys are going to have a very active imagination. You guys are going to be very intelligent, but you're going to be very dismissive of what you don't really care for, like care to learn. You're going to be those type of people that, like I said, you are not going to have a very good attention span. So you'll kind of have this energy where you listen until something just doesn't interest you anymore, and you will just switch like this. You'll just flick off your brain. You won't really be interested anymore. Somebody has to keep your attention for you to be able to kind of like stick on it and listen and learn about it. You can't just listen to like a really boring lecture. You will just completely zone out with this placement. And it is funny because, you know, the third house is such a curious placement, but with Neptune being here, it's like, yes, you'll be curious about all these subjects, but it's almost like you'll learn little bits of everything. You won't be able to stick for a whole project. And I'm not gonna say you won't be able to. That's actually a lie, because you're learning here to have discipline. You know, you have to learn to have discipline with this placement. So it'll be hard for you to stick to something, but how you kind of work with this placement will show how you kind of like stick to learning and information like that. So if you're going to keep going the kind of like Neptunian way and daydreaming, then you may find that you're getting very scattered and not getting anything done. But if you use this placement to your advantage and know that it's discipline that you need to apply, you'll be able to apply yourself to whatever you need to learn and get it done. It all kind of depends on other aspects of your chart as well. And to be fair, like, you will be okay with communicating with other people because you will have empathic abilities. You know what I mean? So yes, okay, there may be a bit of a shield when it comes to explaining how you feel, but you'll definitely be able to communicate with others because you just pick up on them clairsentiently. And I do find with this placement as well, kind of like the first house a little bit, like you may pick up on other people's like accents or their ways of speaking. So you may pick up on how they talk, like they may talk with, you know, some sort of accent, and then you're quite clairsentient, so you may pick up on the way that they're speaking. Or somebody might talk with their hands or kind of do something that you will naturally kind of like pick up on because you have Neptune ruling that, you know what I mean, which is a very empathic planet. So you'll have that kind of governing the way you communicate, where you'll be able to bounce off people and mirror people a lot. So that is Neptune in the third house. What you guys are learning is to definitely discipline yourself when it comes to learning and communicating, and finding a more grounded approach with learning and expressing yourself with other people. So that's all I have for Neptune in the third. I am now going to move on to Neptune in the fourth house. Okay, so Neptune in the fourth house. So the fourth house rules the home. It rules our inner emotions, our inner sanctuary. It rules our mother and our, you know, security and comforts and things like that. So with Neptune being here, this can sometimes apply that you didn't have a very grounded or stable upbringing in life. Like your home wasn't a very stable place to be, or your childhood wasn't very grounded or stable. There may have been a lot of things that went on, and because Cancer can sometimes correlate to our mother in the natal chart, and then we have Neptune, which can sometimes rule like illusions and addictions. You may find with this placement that your parent, especially your mother, may have dealt with addictions or vices and things like that in your childhood. And because the fourth house is not always about just like the practical security of a home, it's also our internal security of where we feel safe and where we feel comfortable. You may find with this placement, like, you kind of learned through childhood to use escapism to feel comfortable. So things may have happened in your childhood that may have made you a lot more ungrounded, so you chose to live in like higher vibrational kind of realities or in dream world to feel a sense of stability, to feel a sense of groundedness. Because sometimes with Neptune in the fourth house, people tend to live in their minds and feel a lot more comfortable moving through life that way. You may also find with this placement, like, you may romanticize your childhood in a way. You may have some rose tinted glasses on when it comes to the past in general, or just memories from your past or from your childhood. You may look at it in a more nicer way than what it really was. Again, that's where that delusion can sometimes come in with Neptune. So, you know, you may have had a parent that wasn't the best growing up, but then you may project that they were like the most doting, amazing parent ever, because that's how you've learned to kind of see your family kind of like a unit as you grow up. You've wanted to see the best in them. Neptune and Pisces energy like to do that. They like to see the best in a situation. So you may apply that to your home life with this placement. And it comes from wanting to remember your family life as something better than what it was, you know? Or you may even find that you put a lot of your security onto friends and other people in your childhood, and found a sense of comfort in other people rather than your family in your childhood and growing up. And like I said about idolizing parents, like, you might idolize them to a point where as you get older and as you grow up, there may be some kind of like harsh realities, or you may be a bit disappointed about how they really are as you get older, because you had such a kind of like rosy kind of like perception of them as you were growing up, and then as you get older and you see that they weren't as magnificent as you thought them to be, because of course they're only human, you may face some disappointment in regards to that. That can happen. Now, I also find with Neptune in the 4th house that people can find solace and people can find comfort in spirituality, find that inner security in healing and spirituality, and anything Neptune influence. So you may find that you find a lot of comfort in you know, it doesn't even have to be spirituality. It can be like the arts or poetry and writing, or it could just be like astrology, tarot reading, things like that. That's where you find a sense of comfort in a way. Another thing that you may find with Neptune in the 4th house is that you may not have learned boundaries growing up for whatever reason, and you're learning to kind of put them in as you get older, because, you know, it may be that you were just never taught them. It may have been that your parent was more of a friend than an actual parent growing up, or they just weren't necessarily there to kind of ground you and install those boundaries in you. So you kind of have that Pisces Neptunian kind of energy as you grow older, where you just see the light in people and you don't necessarily have that discernment and those boundaries to kind of stop people kind of penetrating your sanctuary in a way. So you kind of have to learn as you get older to put boundaries in with other people, and that is something that you'll be learning. And I also find, before I finish this, I also find that Neptune in the 4th house, you may find yourself living by water at one point, either in your childhood or as you get older. You may live by a beach or a river, or just somewhere where there is water, because obviously the 4th house can rule the home, and Neptune is, you know, is the god of the sea. It's a water sign, it's a water planet. So with that being said, you may find that you choose to live or desire to live or have already lived in a home by the ocean or by the water. So yeah, with Neptune in the 4th house, you are really learning to find that inner sanctuary within yourself, and find a more grounded approach to kind of like your inner world, and not let your mind live in fantasy, you know what I mean, and kind of ground yourself. I tend to find people will navigate their way as they get older and kind of grow out of it, but you will probably find in your earlier life that you were a bit more dreamier than most, because it just felt more comfortable for you back then, and you're learning to bring that comfort into the physical world, into your home. So that is all I have for Neptune in the 4th house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 5th house. Okay, so with Neptune being in the 5th house, the 5th house not only rules like pleasures and creativity, it also rules like our romantic relationships. So with that being said, Neptune being in the 5th house, you can sometimes fall into a very idealized role in regards to relationships. You may think of your partners as being more than what they really are, or just have a very rose-tinted glasses view of your own romantic relationships that come into your life. You may tend to idolize them and fall into that kind of like savior role where you want to help somebody, or you want somebody to come and help you, you know, the kind of like a knight in shining armor type of energy. You may apply that when it comes to your relationships, but not necessarily have a very grounded view of what is really going on. So you may lack boundaries in this area. And you know, Neptune is all about self-sacrificing, so you may find that you self-sacrifice yourself a lot for relationships with other people, for relationships in general, just self-sacrificing yourself for them and not really having a sense of discernment when it comes to them. And obviously with Neptune being a planet of like secrecy and things like that, there could be an energy, if it's to manifest in this way, that there's a lot of secrecy around your relationships, in the sense that there may be third party situations either with you or your person involved. And there also may be situations as well, this can manifest sometimes, not all the time, guys. Remember, like, this is just Neptune in the 5th house. You guys will have a lot of other placements and aspects on how this can manifest, but there sometimes can be like a manifestation of having children with Neptune in the 5th house. Like, there may be energy of the child growing up to not know who their father is, or just some sort of like secrecy around the children that you end up having in some type of way. That can manifest sometimes, not all the time, but it can manifest. And the thing is that Neptune is a very, very dreamy, romantic placement sometimes, and obviously the 5th house is all about like pleasure and love. So when you're bringing like the 5th house energy of Leo, and then you bring in the 12th house energy, the Neptunian energy of Pisces, that together is a very, very romantic placement. So it tends to kind of bubble over and you kind of lose your feet in relationships sometimes. But you're really learning with this placement to kind of like ground yourself and have discernment with the romantic partners, and be very careful with the romantic partners that you seek, and that you're not making sure that you're not idealizing them or making them up to be something that they're not in your head. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're coming into your romantic situations with discernment. But on a different note, with Neptune in the 5th house, obviously the 5th house rules pleasures. So with that being said, you guys are probably going to have a love for obviously the 5th house is to do with like Leo as well. Like, you guys are gonna love performing, music, art, drama, dancing, like things like that, where you can be center stage, or anything where you can use that artistic flair. You guys are gonna probably really enjoy that. And if it doesn't go that route, you guys will just have an absolute love for learning, you know, the spiritual side of things, the Neptunian side of things, like astrology, numerology, tarot, you know, the metaphysical. You guys will probably fall into that and do a lot of that in your spare time. You know what I mean? You'll probably find a lot of like solace in this, and a lot of pleasure in that kind of dreamy Neptunian kind of like aspect of arts and dreaming and manifestation and the occult. Like, you'll just enjoy that a lot. And you probably as well will be quite expressive with your emotions, to be honest with you. Very open with your emotions. When we look at the 5th house with Leo can sometimes be very dramatic, and they usually tend to be quite open with their emotions, whereas, you know, the Neptunian energy of Pisces is a very emotionally sensitive placement. So you may find that you may have flare-ups or dramatic flare-ups, or just be very emotional with this placement as well, especially with the people around you. So what you're really learning with Neptune in the 5th house is making sure that you have that discernment with your partnerships and relationships, and make sure that you are falling for actual actions and not words, or what you are creating in your mind. So yeah, that is Neptune in the 5th house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 6th house. Okay, so with Neptune in the 6th house, the sixth house is all about like health and work and routines and things like that. So with Neptune being here, you're not going to be like the most organized person, to be honest with you. You're not going to be the type of person to work off of a list. You'll probably prefer to like follow where your energies go and follow your intuition and work that way, rather than having things very structured, because Neptune is an energy that has you look at the bigger picture. And although the 6th house is somebody that looks at the minor details, Neptune will kind of put a kind of blurry sense over that. So you are going to be slightly unorganized with this placement, to be honest with you. And sometimes with the 6th house being here, that can kind of manifest as somebody somebody who gets quite overwhelmed with a lot of like work tasks, not the type of people that would work well under pressure, to be honest with you, unless it's kind of favorably aspected and you've kind of worked on that as time has gone on. But probably in your earlier life, you wouldn't have been somebody that would be able to deal with big hectic situations where you had a lot to do, because you just that's just not that energy. Neptune in the 6th house is just, you kind of do what you feel, you know, you go off of instinct and your emotions and how you feel, you know. But one thing that I will say about Neptune in the 6th house is that you know, any time Virgo or the 6th house is, you know, kind of present, that is a very healing energy. You know, Virgo is the healer. And with Neptune being here, you guys will probably find some sort of career or some type of work where you are healing other people. And that can be in many different ways. You know, the 6th house usually tends to be more about health and the holistic side of it, and the physical side of it, like fitness and stuff. So it could be that way. But usually with Neptune kind of influencing this, you will probably want to help people through like counseling or, you know, tarot reading, or just helping them spiritually in that type of way, maybe Reiki healing or something like that, because Neptune is all about self-sacrifice, where we self-sacrifice, and you are going to be somebody that will want to do a lot for other people. You're going to be very for other people, so you may even find that you do a lot of charity work and things like that, because you're going to be somebody that will literally just like go above and beyond to help people like feel better or heal people or make people feel happy. Like, you are going to be one of those people that is very, very caregiving. So with that being said, you'll probably dedicate your career to helping other people when that sacrifice kind of element of Neptune kind of crops in. And like I said, you guys not wanting to have like a routine and sometimes getting overwhelmed, it doesn't have to be like a negative thing, especially if it's like really well aspected. Like, you'll just, you know, you'll find your way just being very intuitive and kind of going with the flow. You may even still have routines, but just not follow them the way that a 6th houser like really would. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll kind of like find loopholes and just work more clairsentiently and what you feel is right at the time. You're definitely not going to be somebody that likes to have a lot on your plate. You know what I mean? Like, that'll be a bit too much. But even though you have this beautiful like caregiving energy and helping people, if this is like badly aspected, or just in general, because this is something that you'll probably be learning to balance out, what happens when we give to people, they will just take, and they don't really give anything back. And although you are going to have this kind of like self-sacrifice type of energy where you'll just want to give, you won't really care to have back, you may end up falling into the arms of people that are very grabby, very takey, you know what I mean? They may take advantage of you, and you're gonna have to learn through life to discern when you've given too much and when to step back, because people will take advantage and not necessarily appreciate all that you're doing, because it'll just become a habit. So you're learning to really, with this placement, balance spirituality and practicality, still having that discernment, still making sure that there is somewhat of, I'm not going to say routine, but somewhat of groundedness in your approach to work, but making sure that you have discernment when it comes to other people, and you're not bending over backwards for people all the time to the point that you get drained. You're learning to know and see that you need to have like a reciprocated energy, and you have to do for self sometimes, and that people have to give back, you know, relationships and even jobs, you know, they're give and take, you know. So you're learning to balance the spirituality and the practicality side of it with this placement. I don't necessarily see this being a hard placement at all. I just see it as a placement where you just have to be, I would say, take care of yourself a little bit more and ground yourself a little bit more and not overextend too much. You know, I don't feel that this is quite a better placement than some of the others, to be honest with you. So that's all I have for Neptune in the 6th house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 7th house. Neptune in the 7th houses. I know this placement very well because I have it myself, so I'll give, you know, I probably won't do a story time, but I'll apply my own knowledge of what I've had through this placement, as well as what I've learned. So the 7th house in astrology is all about partnerships and relationships with other people, you know. So with that being said, when Neptune is here, you can sometimes fall into having broken bird syndrome, where you will either want to be saved by somebody in a relationship, or you will want to be the savior. I see like it more so manifests as wanting to be the savior in a relationship, because you want to heal people. You want to heal people that you're with. You want to nurture the people that you're with. But the thing is about Neptune being in the 7th house is it brings this idealistic approach, this rose-tinted glasses approach, where you will never see the people that you're in a relationship. I won't say never. You'll tend to not see the truth or the more grounded side of the people that you're in a relationship with, or the people that you're in friendships with. You'll see the light in them, but you'll kind of overlook the dark and the badder attributes in them. And you may find that because this is you'll find that you'll have this kind of healing energy, and you'll put out that energy that you want to heal people. You'll tend to draw in a lot of broken birds with this placement, a lot of broken people, a lot of people that need fixing, a lot of people that are going through heartache, maybe coming out of other relationships, or people that just are quite codependent. You'll find that those people they tend to be more attracted to you for your healing kind of energy that you do put out. And the thing is that partnerships are meant to be give and take, but that becomes very blurred with Neptune in the 7th house. So you may find that you bend over backwards for a lot of the people that you are in relationships with, and you may idealize that they do the same back for you when they might not. So you may put them on a pedestal and believe that they're a lot different to what they are, so you'll go on above and beyond for them, but they probably you may find out that they're not really doing the same for you. There's a lot of illusions when it comes to that. There's an idealistic sense of projection onto the person that you are in a relationship with or romanticizing about. It's like Neptune comes to put this kind of veil of illusion over you, so that you tend to not see your partners very clearly. And obviously Neptune is the planet of self-sacrifice, so you may find that you self-sacrifice a lot for relationships. Guys, I know this to be true because I have this placement, and I have been in relationships with people that have been stuck on particular vices, or just been very broken in general, and I've completely sacrificed myself for them, being in despair of depression, being in an abusive relationship, or just being in a situation that just was horrible on me, or being cheated on, but I've still not cared about myself and worried about the other person. And that is the early kind of aspect of Neptune in the 7th house. It's not always going to be like that, but I find in your earlier life that may be how relationships may pan out for you if you're not careful and you're not discerning, because it did for me. When I was 18, I was in a very toxic relationship, but I viewed it as the best relationship in the world. I didn't have a grounded sense of what a relationship was, and that is what Neptune can sometimes do with partnerships. But like everything that we go through, it's for us to learn, and this really teaches you throughout your life to have discernment with other people, and ground and really see the truth and the reality of other people. It helps you become stronger in that element. So like everything, it's kind of like a learning curve. It's teaching you to have discernment. It could even fall the other way, where you're just kind of waiting for somebody to save you. Sometimes it can manifest as you being the savior, but it can also manifest as you waiting for somebody to be completely perfect in a way, like Prince Charming, and then coming in, or princess, whatever princess you like, coming in and saving you. You know what I mean? That's the type of element that can happen. You want to be saved from your reality in some type of way, and you may daydream a lot about that and use relationships as that escapism. That can sometimes manifest as well. But what I do find with Neptune being in this placement is that any relationship that you end up stepping into, they are going to be very significant in your life, and they are going to teach you a lot. A lot of your relationships with this placement are going to be like a learning curve for you in a way, and they're almost going to be like a mirror for you, where they mirror your own inner wounds and toxicity back to you for you to heal. You know what I mean? Again, I've seen this happen with my relationships. They'll mirror parts of me that needed healing for me to actually work through, abandonment issues or people pleasing. I've realized it through them as they've mirrored it to me, and I've been able to heal that. So being able to take these lessons from these relationships and use them to heal yourself. The more relationships you get into and the more situations you have with people, it doesn't even have to be a relationship, it can just be a romantic situation, you are always learning and healing yourself through other people, even if the relationship doesn't last. A lot of times with Neptune in the 7th house, your earlier relationships will probably be quite short-lived. You will grow a tremendous amount through these and learn so much about yourself through these in order to heal and become the best version of yourself and become a lot more discerning with other people. I can very much guarantee with Neptune in the 7th house that you are not going to come out of a relationship the same way that you walked in. Again, I have never walked out of a relationship the same way that I walked into it. You know what I mean? I walked in very naive. I came out very discerning and very, you know, my eyes were open. So you'll find that with your relationships with Neptune in this house. And the thing is that with Neptune being in the 7th house, like, you are going to be so empathic, you're going to be so for people, you're going to have the biggest heart, you're going to be so compassionate, but it's like you haven't learned yet how to discern and balance that out. So it's like you have all of this love and you want to give it to everybody, but it's like, you know, you keep giving it and overextending that beautiful energy out to people, then people are just going to take advantage of it and going to leave you high and dry. So you're learning with this placement to balance that out and hone your healing abilities and your spirituality and that, you know, nurturing energy in a more practical way that can actually help people who need it, people that aren't just going to take from you. So you may find that you end up being a tarot reader or going into spirituality or Reiki healing and honing it that way, or you may find that you're going to counseling or therapy or anything where you can put that energy and hone it into something else. That's when you will probably find that you have balance stepping into other relationships, because with this placement, like I said, you jump wholeheartedly in and you over sacrifice yourself. Whereas if you have a project or something healing that you can put all of your energy into, it's balancing that energy out so that you can have a more healthy outlook of a relationship and not wanting to like heal the people that you're with, but instead have somebody that's your equal instead, and use your healing abilities kind of like elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like having that good balance with this placement is what you're learning. So you're really learning to put in boundaries with people, not let people, you know, step over your boundaries, and you're also learning about your own needs and what you really want, because you'll naturally step towards love and relationships with what do they want, what can I give them, what can make them feel better, what can heal them. But over time you're going to be learning to look at it like, what do I want out of a relationship, what do I want out of my partnerships, what are my boundaries, what do they have to meet, what's the criteria that they have to meet before they step towards me. And that is something that you're going to be learning. That's something that I've learned with this placement as well. So you will probably find with this placement that you end up going into a career where you are serving other people, but it's, you know, it's a give and take, it's a career, it's a profession, it's following that life purpose. And you may even find that you find later on a lot of your soulmates or relationships like down that kind of route. You know, you may find relationships that are quite like artsy, not relationships, you may find people to be in a relationship with that are quite artsy or dreamy or sensitive or spiritual, or just unique in a way, you know what I mean? So that's all I have for Neptune in the 7th house. I hope that gave you clarity and was able to help. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 8th house. This gives us a very psychic, empathic and emotional placement. Having your Neptune here, this is very empathic, to be honest with you, because this is very like scorpionic energy where you are very interested in not only like the occult and metaphysical, but you're going to be very interested in like psychology, what makes people tick, more so like the afterlife and things like that. You probably would have questioned many times, like, why am I here, what happens to me after this life? Like, you'll probably be very interested in that and more of the darker kind of side of that, if that makes sense. I don't want to get too dark when I talk about things on my channel. I want to keep it kind of, you know, light, but I do find with this placement, like, you will be quite interested in like death and reincarnation and things like that, you know, when we fall asleep, where do we go, like Billie Eilish said. Like, you'll kind of be interested in all of that, to be honest with you. It's just anything hidden, you know what I mean? Like psychology, you'll probably be into psychology, working out people's minds, why people do the things that they do. You'll probably have an interest for that, to be honest with you, and kind of delve into that. But this is like a very deep, very intense placement. You're going to feel very connected to spirit, very connected to spirituality, but you're going to have like a very huge imagination, but you're going to have very deep emotions. Like, you really can go into like the deepest, like darkest depths of your soul and pull emotion from there and pull energy from there. The side of things that people don't necessarily think and talk about, you're probably going to kind of explore that. I don't mean that in like a grotesque way, by the way. I just mean it in like, you know, like death and psychology and maybe like you know, like serial killers and things like that, like looking into that and why they do what they do, not actually doing it, but like like looking into why they do what they do, psychology, understanding their mind. Like, you're going to be very interested in that and finding out why people do things and what is hidden and what, you know, all things hidden you're going to be wanting to shed a light on with this placement and dive deep into, and you'll have no problem doing that at all. I hope that made sense. Sometimes I don't make sense, but I really hope that that did. With this placement, like I said, it's a psychic placement. You are probably going to have very prophetic dreams. The fact that Neptune's in the 8th house, like, you're going to have very vivid dreams, and you probably have dreams where something will happen, and then like the next day it actually happens. A lot of deja vu, a lot of like dreams literally coming true the next day. You're going to have that on point, especially if you learn to hone that. You're going to be quite good at being able to see into the future in some type of way. The thing is about this placement and where Neptune really comes in and brings in its challenges is that with you guys being so deep, you know, this is a very deep placement. The 8th house is very deep, Neptune's very deep. With it being so deep, when you look to partnerships and relationships or even like deep friendships, you are going to want such deep connections with these people. Like, you're almost going to want to like merge your soul with these people. You're going to want that intensity. You're going to want to feel like you're exploring their soul in a way. And although that's very like beautiful, not a lot of people have that much substance to them, which can be quite disappointing for you, because you may want to, you know, go really, really deep with somebody emotionally, and then you find that they can't go as deep as you. They can't fulfill your needs like that, and that can become very disappointing for you. And you may even find that you chase people that seem quite destructive, or people that may love bomb you, or people that aren't the best in a healthy way for you, but you may romanticize that, because like I said, with the 8th house, it's usually about the darker side and the more like taboo side. So you may find that you romanticize you know, relationships that are quite dark, Harley Quinn Joker type relationships, you know what I mean? You may find that you romanticize that and that you want that. That can sometimes happen, and you have to kind of like learn to have discernment for these types of situations and see them for what they are, because what you're craving is a very deep soul-bearing relationship and intimacy with anyone in general, and you kind of may tend to follow, you know, the Harley Quinn Joker type relationship, that toxic side of a relationship, to bring you that substance, you know what I mean, that depth, because you may find like a normal relationship might be a little bit boring for you. Like, that can happen. And the reason I'm mentioning it, I would skirt very lightly over this, but the reason I mention it is, like I always say, like, my astrology videos are for us to help us see our parts of us and work on them and heal them and help them. And obviously I want the best for like all of you. So knowing that these toxic traits might be there, you can, you know, use that to your advantage and work on it and be able to kind of discern that. But also as well, guys, like the 8th house rules sex. And you may find that you're into very like taboo sex, or, you know, very out there sex. I'm going to keep this bit a bit PG. You know, very out there you know, sexual experiences, and you may find that fun, but then you may find that whoever you get into a relationship with may not enjoy that as much, and it can be disappointing. And it could be that you are very much a giver in your intimate relationships, if you know what I mean, and you give a lot, you like to give a lot of pleasure, but then you find that no one can really match up to what you're giving out in a way. That can sometimes happen. Like, you'll probably be very good in that side of your life and really hone in on that, but people can't really match up to you, and you may get a bit disappointed in the bedroom, if you know what I mean. That can sometimes happen with this placement. And like always, I will say you may tend to not have boundaries, like with relationships, kind of like the 7th and the 5th house. So you are learning to really have boundaries with your relationships, because you could find that you give a lot to your partners, because you know you want to, like, Neptune is that kind of like sacrifice type of energy. So you may find that you want to give a lot to your intimate relationships and give a lot to your partners, and you don't really get it back. So you want to make sure that you're having that grounded kind of discernment when it comes to that. And as well as that, the 8th house also rules other people's money. So you may find that you give a lot, like you sacrifice a lot in regards to money with other people, and you don't really get your share. So you could invest with people and then like not really get what you deserve out of it, or just give a lot of money to your partners and the people around you, like just sacrificing that to them, and then they don't really like follow through. So you want to make sure that you're having discernment and you're not giving too much to the people around you like that. So what you're really, you know, working on with Neptune in the 8th house is really having a more grounded approach to relationships. So what you're actually learning with Neptune in the 8th house is to have a more grounded approach to relationships, and remembering that a relationship is give and take, and making sure that you have healthy boundaries in relationships and that you're not romanticizing your intimate relationships. So what I would personally say with Neptune in the 8th house is to make sure that you're following your instincts of, you know, finding that belonging somewhere in regards to like the occult and spirituality and, you know, psychology, anything where you can, you know, focus on that darker side and focus on that more deeper side, so that when you step towards your relationships, you're not overextending and, you know, making room for toxicity. Instead, you're looking at them as someone who can reciprocate, you know, their energy to you and you to them, and having that balance, so that you're not putting all of your energy on one person and having that kind of toxic, you know, relationship. Instead, it's going on something that you enjoy, like, you know, spirituality and tarot reading and astrology and psychology and all of that. Maybe balance that out, use that deep intensity for good, and then, you know, have a more balanced relationship and apply it to that. I feel as people get older, they usually, you know, learn from their mistakes and fall into that, but that is something that you are learning with Neptune in the 8th house. So that is all I have for you guys for Neptune in the 8th house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 9th house. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video, hopefully. Okay, so with Neptune in the 9th house, it's funny because the 9th house is all about like expansion and luck and wisdom and higher knowledge, and then Neptune is all about spirituality and, again, wisdom and illusions and imagination. So these two placements actually go hand in hand. They're actually quite similar, but it's how it's aspected that is going to really indicate how this is going to manifest for you, whether it's going to be in a good, or I wouldn't say good or bad way, in a more positive or in a more negative way for you guys to kind of like deal with and hone. So for example, like I said about the 9th house being about luck and expansion and things like that, you can sometimes find with Neptune being here, say now you're going through like a really dark experience or like a really negative situation. I mean, we all go through them in life, is what I was just trying to say. Like, you will have this absolutely like optimistic sense of it, where you'll just have this faith in like a higher power to get you through it. You could be going through like a really excruciating breakup, or, you know, just like a really traumatic time, but it's like you always see the light in the situation, and that will help you through. So you could be going through a great depression, but your faith is going to help you through. You have this kind of like sacrifice when it comes to your faith, where you will just like, whatever it is that you believe in, religion or spirituality, you will just believe that that higher power is going to help you through what you're going through. And a lot of the times it usually will, and that can usually manifest in a really good way, because it helps you through anything in life. You have this strong sense of getting through anything in life. This can also manifest in a negative way sometimes, where you can have such an overly optimistic view of what is going on that you might want to rub out the severity of of what is going on and gloss over it and pretend everything's fine and dandy, instead of actually looking at the concrete situation of what's going to happen, and instead of applying yourself to it and actually seeing something's gone wrong or seeing something's been bad, you look at it in a more higher vibrational way. But sometimes that can do more harm than good because you're not paying attention to it, and it could end up worse. So there's two ways that it can manifest in. It can either help you through really, really good times, or it can have you kind of glossing over a bit of a mess and not really wanting to deal with it. It depends how it's aspecting in your chart. Now, Neptune brings about this energy of sacrificing, and with that being said, with Neptune being here in the 9th house, you may find that you may sometimes tend to self-sacrifice yourself for your views in regards to spirituality or even religion. You may find that you like dive deep into spirituality or religion with no anchor. Like, instead of a more grounded approach where you're like, okay, I'm in the physical world, but I'm learning about this, there's just this kind of energy of you just jumping in blindfolded and just surrender into the divine or surrender into your religion, and not really having a more practical base to kind of like back it up. And again, sometimes that can work out really well, and sometimes that can be more of a negative aspect depending on how it's aspected, you know what I mean? You'll have this very extreme faith in a higher power. You want to make sure that there isn't a lot of like escapism here. There tends to be a lot of scattered energy here, because the 9th house isn't one for looking at the minor details and being grounded. You know, the 9th house, it can be sometimes quite an escapey energy. It's a very seeing from a bird's eye view type of energy. They don't really put things into concrete. You know, they can sometimes have a hard time with that, people who have a lot of 9th house. And then with Neptune coming in here, it's the least grounded out of all the planets, so you can tend to fall into escapism with this placement. And you may find that you might not work towards your goals so strongly because you believe that a higher power will take care of it. So that could manifest like you believe in manifestation, but you like manifest all the time, but you don't actually put that concrete. Whereas to get a manifestation to come in to fruition, you want to have a level of practicality to be able to follow that up. For example, if you want, you know, to lose like a stone or something like that, like a couple of pounds, you are not going to want to just manifest that and then just eat Cheetos all day. You're going to have to apply yourself. It's kind of like this energy where, you know, like in Princess and the Frog and Tiana, like she wishes on a star, but she knows she's going to work hard too. There's that type of energy. Like sometimes you can forget that you need to work towards your goals instead of just wishing on a star. So you're learning with this placement to have a more grounded, practical approach, as well as using your spirituality and your optimism too. You know, you're not supposed to abandon it. It's just making them work together and not being so for one and not the other. You want to ground yourself into reality. I hope that made sense. You want to physically work on your goals instead of just wishing for them, is what I was saying in hindsight. You know what I mean? But with this placement, you're going to be very intuitive. You're going to be very into like philosophies and things like that. Anything where you can understand like the higher power or feel connected to a higher power or connected to something like that, you are going to be very interested into it. So you probably will fall down the route of spirituality. Again, old philosophies and things like that, you're going to be very interested in, and you're going to have a very optimistic, intuitive approach to life. But like I said, what you're working on is grounding and making sure that you are grounding all of your dreams into reality as well. You know what I mean? We don't just have the seed and think it's going to turn into a stalk. We have to water it to bury it, water on it, make sure it's getting its sunlight. You know what I mean? We have to make sure to be doing the nitty gritty as well. So that's something that you're learning with this placement. So that's all I have for Neptune in the 9th house. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 10th house. Okay, so with Neptune in the 10th house, you may actually have trouble in the beginning stages of your life actually navigating what it is that you actually want to do with your life. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have any direction. It could just manifest in the sense that you have your hands in so many pots or pies or whatever that saying is, that you just don't, it's hard for you to hone on one particular aspect and avenue and work towards it. You may have some sort of delusions there, and there may even be worries, especially in your earlier life, of being dependent depended on in your work life or depended on by other people. There's this energy of being quite scared to step out into the big wild world and have people like rely on you. There may be some difficulties in regards to that, but you're learning to kind of master that and ground yourself and become that spiritual warrior that you're supposed to be. So obviously with the 10th house, with Neptune being in the 10th house, Neptune rules spirituality and imagination and dreaming and things like that. So with that being said, with it being in the 10th house of career, you guys will probably find that in your career you are going to have a very healing profession, a profession that isn't very practical in a way, because obviously the 10th house is a very practical energy, but Neptune kind of blurs the lines a little bit. So you may find that you end up having a job in a very unconventional way, in a very Neptunian way, where you may be a Reiki healer, you may be into tarot, spirituality, and again you may be into like the arts, music, theatre, things like that. You may, poetry, writing. You may find that you fall into a career of that and make money doing that and find a name for yourself and your place in the world in that sort of avenue. But whatever it is that you're doing with this placement, you are going to want to feel very called to it. Any career you're working from your heart, you want to feel like it's your purpose, you want to feel like you're called to it, and you are going to want to be creative in some type of way in regards to your career. You're going to want to apply your creative abilities to your career with this placement. So you really are going to want to be working towards a job that makes you feel very inspired, makes you feel like it's your sole purpose, makes you feel like it gives you a place in the world. It has to be meaningful for you guys to give your energy to it. But with the the higher angelic kind of energy that Neptune brings, you may struggle or find it hard, especially in earlier life, to bring your dreams into the physical world, because Neptune is again a very spiritual, it's the most ungrounded planet, it's a water planet, and you're bringing that into like the concrete earthy energy of the 10th house, which is Capricorn. It may take you a little while to be able to bring things into reality because you're used to living in the higher realms. Your creativity is literally coming from the higher realms, so to be able to bring it into the 3D, into the concrete, will be a bit of a challenge for you, but it's something that you're working on and learning in this particular lifetime. With this placement, you'll probably be somebody that dreams very, very big, has very, very big dreams and aspirations, and then when it comes to actually following it up and bringing it into the physical, they're like, oh my god, how do I do this? Like, I had this big dream, I wanted to go to the moon, I don't even have a rocket, how am I going to build a rocket? Like, I know that's like a really terrible example, but it's that type of energy. With this placement, you're going to dream big, but that means that you have a big task at hand and you're learning to have that stamina to build that for yourself. But you're not really going to be the type of people with this placement that's going to work for like money or success and all these medals. Like, it's not going to mean that much for you, especially as you get older. Like, you're going to be somebody that's working just to create stability for yourself and the people around you, and genuinely help other people and make you feel full. As long as you feel full, you're good. You don't really care for the flashing lights or anything like that. You just want to be able to feel full in the career that you're doing. That's all you really care about. So yeah, with Neptune in the 10th house, that is what you're learning. You're learning to bring your beautiful creativity and that spiritual side, or that artistic side, that unconventional side, into the more conventional reality that is the 3D, and that is the task you have at hand in this lifetime. So that is all I have for Neptune in the 10th. I'm now going to move on to Neptune in the 11th house. Okay, so with Neptune in the 11th house, I actually quite like Neptune in the 11th house, to be honest with you, especially in other people. Like, I really find that people with Neptune in the 11th house are very caring, very for other people, very for their friends, very loving, very generous, very sweet, very kind, and very for other people. The 11th house rules, as well as it ruling like technology and things like that, it does rule friendships, humanitarian efforts and things like that. So you are going to be somebody that is very for other people, and your relationships and friendships, more so friendships, are going to be something Your friendships are going to be something that is very big in your life, something that you put a lot of value on. So you are going to be the type of people that go above and beyond for other people. You may even find that you will end up going into a lot of humanitarian acts, helping other people that are in need, being part of like a bigger circle where you help other people. You may even find that you adopt or just help people that genuinely do need your assistance in this lifetime. This lifetime is going to be very for other people. The only thing is that with Neptune being in the 11th house and you wanting to give to other people and help other people, some people will take advantage, because obviously if we give, people are just going to take, and you may have some illusions when it comes to friends and people around you where you don't necessarily see the truth of them, and they could be taking advantage of you and your kindness, you know what I mean, taking your kindness for weakness. So you're learning to have discernment with other people and knowing that there is a limit to giving, and making sure that people are reciprocating your energy and having respect for how much you are giving, you know what I mean. So there will be a little bit of an illusion around the friendships that you have around you, and you want to make sure that you're discerning people around you and that they're not around you for the wrong reason. But when this is goodly aspected, like I said, you guys may fall into charity work or anything where you can help people that genuinely are in need. You sometimes may fall into with, you know, it aspecting badly, like peer pressure from other people. Like if other people are doing stuff, you may just get influenced by them and feel like you need to do it too, or people just might be able to peer pressure you into doing things that you wouldn't normally do. So definitely you are learning discernment with this placement and knowing to stand your ground with other people and not just doing things because the people around you are. But you will actually find, like with Neptune in the 11th house, you'll probably have a lot of friends that are into spirituality or the metaphysical, or like theatre or art or things like that. You know, whether it's like a career or whether they just enjoy doing it and that's your topic of discussion, you'll probably have a lot of groups of friends that are into that, or find yourself in a community that are very into spirituality where you can learn about the occult and metaphysical and things like that. The only thing that I would say about, like, you know, having a lot of friends and having people be a big part of your life with this placement is that Neptune brings a lot of sensitivity, and you may be somebody that doesn't like it when people don't like you or say things that you don't like, and that can really make you very sensitive. You might not even stick up for yourself sometimes with this placement until later on in your life, and you may be somebody that tends to get really fragile and upset if somebody doesn't like, so they end up people pleasing. That can sometimes happen with this placement. You might end up people pleasing for other people just to kind of like fit in or something like that, just because you don't want them to not like you, because you know, you're such a caring person and you tend to kind of self-sacrifice in that type of way for people. So again, you're learning to have boundaries with this placement. All in all, you're going to want to have a lot of friendships around you that really inspire you, that, you know, kind of help with your imagination and that kind of like dream world. You're going to want people that really uplift you and stuff like that. But you're just really learning in this lifetime to have discernment with other people and put in boundaries with other people so they don't take advantage of your kindness, because you're naturally here to be empathic with other people and help other people. Just don't let people take too much. And so that's all I have for Neptune in the 11th. I'm now going to move on to the final one, which is Neptune in the 12th house. Okay, so finally we have Neptune in the 12th house. The 12th house is ruled by Neptune, so Neptune is in its home place here. So this makes for a very psychic placement. You will probably find that you're very spiritual, very empathic, and extremely sensitive with this placement, because this is water and water. You know what I mean? Like, you are going to be extremely sensitive to other people, and extremely sensitive to the environment around you, to be honest with you. Very empathic to what is going on, and you probably will have some sort of psychic ability here, to be honest with you. So you're naturally going to give off a very healing energy that is going to draw people to you. You'll probably find a lot of people depend on you to help them in times of need, counseling, things like that. You'll just give off this very healing aura that Neptune kind of brings in for you. And obviously you are going to have a huge compassion for other people, a huge compassion for like humanity in general, but it's like you have a lot of this compassion, you have a lot of this sensitivity, but sometimes that can be so much. You know, this is the 12th house of Pisces, and then you have Neptune that is ruled by Pisces. That's a lot of Neptunian, Piscean energy. So you want to make sure that you are not getting like lost in the current of the ocean. Literally, Neptune's like the god of the sea. You want to make sure that you're not getting swept away by the undercurrent of the ocean, and you're making sure that you are grounding yourself, because you can become so sensitive to everything around you that can sometimes become a little bit too much for you. You could end up falling into anxiety. You could even fall into vices to kind of help you escape a little bit like that. That can sometimes happen with this placement, but what you're learning with this placement is to ground yourself and anchor yourself into reality. There's a lot of grounding work that sometimes needs to be done with this placement, so that they can ground themselves and not get swept away by their emotion and their empathic abilities that they have for other people. Because Neptune's dreamy aspects are going to have you living in dream world sometimes rather than the actual physical reality, because it's just safer then. It's more just natural for you. You're going to be a very dreamy energy anyway, and it's just going to be more natural for you to live in like a more alternate state in a way. It's just going to feel more easy for you. So you kind of have to learn to kind of ground yourself to actually get things done in the physical world and ground yourself into the 3D, because sometimes you'll just be floating around lost at sea, you know what I mean? And that is something that you are basically working on with this placement, bringing things into the physical, bringing things into a more grounded aspect, because you're going to have such big dreams with this placement. Very I wouldn't say out of touch, but very very big dreams that to some people may be like, whoa, that's a lot, and you're learning to really ground them into reality. And you may get overwhelmed by the amount of work that needs to be done in the physical to bring them into reality. You may just struggle to really ground them and actually bring them into the practical sense, and it's something that you're really working on in this particular lifetime, to kind of be human. You're used to feeling like a angelic presence just floating around. You're learning to kind of bring that into the physical and be human, you know what I mean? And like I said about Neptune being in the 12th house, you're going to be so, you know, you're going to be quite highly sensitive. You're going to be very emotional, picking up on other people's energies, and that can sometimes very much overwhelm you. You may sometimes with this placement, it may manifest like you end up isolating because, you know, the big wild world is just a bit too much for you. You might get very overwhelmed by this particular energy, so you may become quite shy and avoidant of others, and you want to make sure that you're not doing that, because that can kind of stunt your spiritual growth, you know what I mean? We learn through spirituality through, you know, the higher realms, but there's a lot that can be learned about us spiritually through other people too, because we are all spiritual beings. So you need to remember that and make sure that you're not avoiding other people and being avoidant of other people and quite shy and kind of, you know, hiding from other people and their intense emotions. Like, I do feel there's a lot of grounding work that needs to be done to be able to have healthy relationships and things like that with people, because you will probably tend to suffer with anxiety and things like that when it comes to the physical world and all the people running around. Like, you just kind of want to be a bit of a hermit, you know what I mean? So you're learning to ground yourself and be okay with bringing all the beauty that's up here into the physical. So that's all I have for Neptune. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know how this was for you. I'm sending you guys lots of love, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video. So thank you guys so much for watching.